You're listening to Men of Abundance, episode 73, with Mark Goblowsky.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
Aloha, Men of Abundance. What is going on in your world today? I would love to hear from you. You should know by now that you can get in on the conversation in our private Facebook group, and you can get access to our private Men of Abundance community on Facebook at menofabundance.com. Just click on the Members Only tab at the top of the page. It'll take you right there. It'll give you the information about our upcoming Men of Abundance Society, which I'm super excited about. So many people are standing by and waiting for this. And if you want to get first dibs at that and be a founding member, you definitely want to become a member of our private Facebook group. I recognize some of you are not on Facebook, so if you still want to be a founding member, just shoot me an email at wally@menofabundance.com. I'll make sure you get the information so you can be a founding member of our Men of Abundance Society. Now, I want to get right into our conversation today, and I'm here to tell you this is the toughest conversation I've had so far. My conversation with Mark today is most definitely going to test your emotions. You're going to get angry. You're going to get pissed off. You might even shed a tear or two, and I'm not ashamed to tell you that I certainly did during this conversation. I got a little bit choked up. Mark got quite choked up, and you'll see why in just a minute. This is one of the most heart-wrenching, kick-in-the-gut moments that I've heard so far. But what he's doing with that is just nothing short of beautiful and very, very abundant. Our featured guest today is an Air Force veteran, career martial artist professional, author, podcaster, and entrepreneur. He is on a mission to help others to overcome the obstacles in their life based on his own life experiences. And he's going to share just a few of those experiences with you. Men of Abundance, I'm very honored to introduce you to Mark Goblowsky. Mark, welcome to Men of Abundance, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me as a guest, Wally. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And we got to give Karen Schwab some love, man, and Interview Valet, because they have sent me some very amazing people to have these conversations with, and I just can't say enough about them.
You know, I've had pretty much the same experience. They have sent me some amazing stories that are encouraging and hopeful and help people experience abundance and prosperity mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. They're awesome over at Interview Valet, and Karen, she's just the best.
Yeah, she is, absolutely. And I've had Tom on the show, and Tom Schwab, Karen's husband, and just an amazing, amazing individual. I love watching his live feeds on Facebook. So, yeah, I just got to give them some love today.
Yeah, he's great. He's an awesome guy.
Indeed. Where are you at?
I'm in Nebraska.
I have not been in Nebraska. I have not been much in that part of the United States. I've been all over the world and all over mostly the West Coast and just a little bit up on the East Coast, but have not been deep up into there.
Yeah, you know, I did not grow up here. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, right on Lake Erie, about 25 miles east of Cleveland, tiny, small town. You spent some time in the military, and this happened to be my last duty station, so I put down roots here.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's how it happens. Actually, this was my last duty station as well, so it was easy to just stay right here in Hawaii. Well, easy in some regards.
Well, I'd have to say you won the last duty station battle contest.
Indeed. And this was tour number 2, which it rarely happens for people to get to Hawaii in the first place. Even though, you know, I know you're Air Force, and we're going to get into that. We have Hickam right down the street, but I had an opportunity to come here twice, and I've been here 6 years at this point. So, yeah, I can't complain, none whatsoever. So, you know, before we get started in the show, Mark, I like to start the show out with an attitude of gratitude, basically the same way I start pretty much every morning. So, what do you have to be grateful for today?
You know, I'm grateful for, of all things, a body that can heal. I went through 2 surgeries in the last 60 days. One of them a major, and they were both for 2 different things. And I'm just so grateful that there's medicine out there, and there's doctors, and there's ways of dealing with, real big issues in our lives, and that this community of medical practitioners, professionals, one, can help us, and two, that our bodies are just so amazing at healing. Because I was in a bad spot a couple of months ago, health-wise. I could hardly get off the floor. I was in so much pain and so weak. And, just getting something fixed, man, it can turn your life around in a big, powerful way. So these days, I'm just really grateful for this body and how it's working.
That's a mouthful. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I've been in a similar situation, and I'm not going to get into it here, but you're absolutely correct. The body can completely heal itself, and I've been in the health and fitness industry for quite some time, and I was an Army medic for 25 years, so I have a little bit of knowledge in this area, and I still work in a medical facility, as a matter of fact, at Tripler. But the body can heal itself if you treat it right. And, there's a lot to be said for, our doctors and how far we've come with medicine and whatnot. But I'm a strong believer in just really taking care of your body, feed it right, move regularly, drink a lot of water, and, just get the right nutrition in your body, and it will correct itself. It's just amazing.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we got started in the show here, I talked a little bit about you, but really I like to hear it directly from you, Mark. So, at this point, I'd like for you to get a little bit personal. Let's find out who Mark is, and a little bit more than what you've already shared with us.
Yeah, great. Currently I'm a career martial artist. I teach martial arts for a living, and have for full-time since 1990, so we're approaching 27 years. Besides that, I've become a podcaster and an author, but my biggest and most important job, as far as I'm concerned, is raising my son Josh. While I love the martial arts, and I love what it does for me, and I love what it does for others, that's why I share it with people. My biggest responsibility these days is just making sure my 15-year-old son is, prepared for the world. So life is good. I have a couple hundred students. Stay pretty busy. I've taken up writing as well. I've got a book that's going to be coming out soon. I guess podcaster, author, career martial arts professional, teacher, and dad. Oh, and husband. Sorry. Don't want to leave anybody out.
Don't want to leave that one out, that's for sure. Don't want to make that mistake. And I don't know if
she can run on autopilot pretty much. She doesn't need me, so that's my son.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. But I don't know if your wife listens to your shows or not. Mine does not. So I could say just about anything, and every once in a while I say, you really should go listen to some of the shows. But she hears me all day long, so she don't need to hear me on a podcast, man. But dude, I really dig the martial arts. I've just never done it. I've just never taken the time. I started getting my kids into it. My oldest, my 17-year-old, he wants to get into it right now as well. And I've known guys throughout my life that, were in it from a young age in martial arts. And I just love the discipline. I love you see all the great stuff on the movies, that's one thing. But I know the discipline that you get from that and that you're teaching it just stays with you for life. I just think that's the thing that I really get from the whole practice of anything like that.
Yeah, the martial arts is a powerful tool for delivering things like self-discipline, self-control, respect, and an indomitable spirit, like this never say die, never quit, never give in. I don't mean give in. I don't mean that in the negative way, like you're being pig-headed. The martial arts is the opposite, but to never give up, I guess, in a worthy cause. So, yeah, there's so many powerful byproducts of training in the physical side of the martial arts, but you really need a good teacher. So I wish you well on that search for your boy. Is he interested in like MMA stuff, JiuJitsu, or traditional arts?
Yeah, specifically jiu-jitsu. That's specifically what he's been looking at. And he can't get into the course. He can't get into it until he's something about over here in Hawaii, and it's with the school, I believe. He's been talking about it, in that he has to attend 5. I don't know if it's 5 meets or whatever, 5 events. Before he can actually be accepted. I'm guessing that they want him to see what it really is before he commits to it, which is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right, and it's good for you, it's good for him, and it's good for the school, because it sounds like that school's got some integrity, and they don't want to treat this like it's just another activity where, sometimes we jump into things and we jump out. That sounds like maybe they're pretty serious about the integrity of their school.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought the same thing. So we're definitely looking into that. Now, I've looked at your bio and I've looked at your background. You're Air Force veteran, and thank you for your service. I don't take that lightly at all. And I've looked over your podcast and stuff, and some of the guests that you've had on, guys that I personally know, Matt Miller, Aaron Walker. Matt Miller's another veteran, Air Force veteran, pilot, former pilot. Some amazing men that you've talked to, and you've talked to a lot of people who had some real struggles. And I love the name of your podcast. It's just, it hits home with exactly everything that I'm all about, which is strength through the struggle. I just absolutely love that. But I know you've had struggles of your own. Based on the little bit that I know about you already. So I'd like for you to share that kick in the gut moment with us and, kind of help us feel that a little bit.
The biggest kick in the gut moment for me was 11 years ago, and this is the biggest one. I had some growing up, too, that, left a mark, but this one involved my son, Joshua. He was 3.5 years old at the time, and he was riding in the back seat of his mother's Chevy Cavalier one Friday morning, beautiful clear day in August, and a semi-truck moved into their lane and hit the car, which sent it spinning across 5 lanes, where when it came to a stop, another semi-truck plowed into it. So he was the victim of a hit-and-run collision with 2 semi-trucks when he was 3.5, and he's 15 now. And that, that'll take the wind out of your sails real quick. It's hard. I mean, it's even hard to talk about it. Like, I just noticed my voice changed.
It did.
Like, everything, my whole body just changed, just thinking about that day and getting the phone call and going to the hospital and just going through that whole experience. That was a living hell.
Yeah, man, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us. I know it's hard, and I'm feeling it because I got 3 boys, and I couldn't imagine ever. I mean, how when they have a cold, when they can't breathe through the night, that's painful. I couldn't imagine the damage that caused for you and your family. How did you come out of that? I mean, where did that take you guys, you and your family?
It took me to the pits. I mean, when somebody you love or is that close to you and they get hurt to that level, he ended up, with a massive traumatic brain injury, both hemispheres, all the lobes, the brain stem. I mean, he was actually the rehabilitation doctor that eventually took him in and spent 3 months with him inpatient in a different hospital, described him as neurologically devastated. Now, it's a good thing I didn't see that when we were going through it, because I don't know how I would have processed that level of information. But he spent 4 full months in a hospital, comatose for 34 or 35 days. And just my experience with comas, it's not like on TV where, when they're out of the coma, they wake up and, they ask for pizza and a deck of cards or something. that was not our experience. He was no different on the day they diagnosed him non-comatose than he was the day before. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't eat, he couldn't lift a finger. He was actually so devastated that a newborn baby had a better chance of surviving. Like a 1 second old baby had a better chance of surviving than he did. He was on life support. It was tough, and sitting in a hospital for 4 months, 24/7, eating there, showering there. I'm telling you what, man, that'll suck the energy out of you. But you do what you got to do because that's your kid. You got to dig deep. You got to find the strength or the energy or the fortitude to be able to press on, because now they're in a condition that they can't do for themselves anymore. A 3.5-year-old can't do a lot anyhow, but they can't breathe anymore, they can't walk anymore, and so it left him in a bad spot, and it took us to a difficult place. But you put one foot in front of the other. This is so important, this is so critical that you show up, because somebody else's life is really depending on it. So you got to find a way to do it.
Yeah, and that age is my favorite age. They're learning, they're growing. They're just the cutest little buttons. You just want to squeeze them to death, man. And I know at some point you couldn't even hardly hold him because of the, everything that was going on around him and everything. Not the way you wanted to, anyway. Man.
Yeah, it was. He was still in the ICU. I think it had been over a week. Which was the first time I could get him out of the bed, and the nurse let me hold him in that chair, man. And I'm telling you, that was a great moment, because you can have that connection again, even though he's in like this different state. It made it normal. You're in an ICU, and he's unconscious, and the doctors don't know what's going to happen, and for that moment, it was normal again. But yeah, wow. Whew.
Thanks for sharing that. I can imagine. I feel that. I definitely feel that. So, how's he doing now?
He, in so many ways, he's doing great. He's 15. They never predicted that he would walk, talk, or eat again. They actually believed he would end up in a long-term care facility and probably pass on within the first couple of years. Matter of fact, he was so bad off. His pediatrician came to the ICU, as his pediatrician. And 5 years later, I asked her what she thought when she showed up, and she says, "Well," and she hesitated. And I said, "No, please tell me what you thought," because I knew what I had seen in all the doctors' eyes. And she said, "Well, I was just hoping that he would pass right there." Because I knew what was in store for you guys, and it wasn't going to be easy for anybody, especially him. So, that being said, he's walking, he's talking, he's eating. If you were to see him walking down the street, you would look at him and go, "Hey, there's something not right there." You could see that there's something wrong with the way he moves. His balance is compromised, his dexterity is compromised. He's got intellectual delays and some deficits, and there's some emotional stuff, meaning and some immaturity things. He doesn't have outbursts or anything, but he's amazing. He has this beautiful sense of humor. He's a typically developing 15-year-old boy in some ways, and other ways, we're dealing with a 6-year-old briefly for moments here and there. He can read on about a first grade level. He's probably going to have to have somebody with him, live with somebody throughout his life. He'll probably not be able to remember to turn off the stove and those types of things, but he brightens up the room, man. I'm telling you, he brightens up the room.
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful. I want to go down a road that is kind of difficult as well, and I'm curious to what your thoughts are on it. I think I know my answer based on what I know of you, but have you ever thought about the other driver?
I used to be, in the beginning, the news reporters were coming around, and they'd ask a similar question, and I'd say, I just want to know why he didn't stop. I mean, that's all I want. I don't care about anything else. And, I could forgive him. I just, wish he'd say he was sorry. And about 6 or 8 weeks about 8 or 10 weeks into the event, I got word from somebody who spoke to somebody else who had called a tip in. They thought that they knew the guy who was driving the truck. And the guy had parked his truck like the week my son got hurt, and it hadn't been out of the garage since then. And so this guy suspected his buddy of it, called the cops. Somehow I got that information. The truck was maybe 40 miles from here. And the day I got that information, all my forgiveness disappeared. And I thought to myself, what if I just drive to that town and find him? But you know what? 2 things. One, I was too scared of how I would respond. And 2, it wasn't the guy. So what if I would have gone and pulled some bonehead move and confronted him? And here was this innocent man, and who knows what I would have said or done. But I used to think I could forgive him, and I think I have, and I have 1,000 times over. But that moment when I thought I knew who he was, my heart briefly turned to stone. So I'm just being honest, man.
No,
I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it, but I'm being honest.
No, and that's a normal reaction. I'd feel the same way. I'd never been in that situation, but I just can't imagine where I would be in my head with that information, and when I would be able to confront that individual. So, that's why you're living the abundant life that you are today, because, it seems like you haven't really. You definitely want to be able to completely forgive the actions of this individual who you don't even know and probably will never come in contact with, because he or she's out there living their life, doing whatever the heck they're doing, or maybe they're traumatized by it too. We don't know. We just don't know. But I'm not I'm not a counselor or anything like that, but I just know once we let that go, because there's nothing we can do with it other than evil, other than just, like you said, your heart turned to stone, then until we let that go, we just can't live. We can't live. You can't live for your son. And, if you were to go do something stupid, then, you've given up your chances of being that caretaker and being that father that you need to be for your son. So, yeah, I commend you for that. That's tough to deal with, man.
Well, I just, as a reminder to myself, I just wrote down 3 words: let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody came into your life at some point and kind of pulled you out of this dark space. Can you talk a little bit about that pivot point?
Yeah, I was really taking care of my son almost 24/7, and my energy was drained. This was 4 years after the accident, and it had just been grueling, because even when he got out of the hospital, he had to go to 12 appointments a week for months. So it was just emotionally draining, financially draining, spiritually draining, physically draining. But anyhow, I realized I needed to get some sort of help, and a buddy of mine who has 2 kids with disabilities mentioned a conference to me. And when he told me about that conference and he gave me that brochure, I looked over the brochure, and on the back of it, it said one of the sessions was something called Good Grief. And it's not the Charlie Brown good grief. It's the like grief. We got to find a way to making it good. And when I saw that, I knew I had to go to this conference. And fortunately, my buddy was going the same time. And so I went there for a weekend. And man, that conference really shifted things for me internally, mentally and emotionally, so that I could see the world with hope again, an abundance of hope. Like, not just enough to get me through the next day or week, because at that point I didn't know how I was going to get through the next month. I had that thought, like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the next month. But when I went to that conference and I saw other people that were struggling with different types of situations for their own kids, their kids with disabilities, it made me realize I'm not alone in this. And if they could get through it, as they told some of their stories, well, if they could get through what it was they were going through, then I can get through this. I don't know how exactly, but it just gave me hope to know that there's other people that have navigated their way out of a big crisis, a tragedy in their life regarding their children. None of them had kids with TBIs or traumatic brain injuries, but they were all going through something. And man, that second when you realize you're not alone in this world and that you really do have what it takes to get through to the other side, that changed everything. Because what I've learned, when hope disappears, so does action. I mean, we like quit taking action when hope disappears. And so, you know, I would call out to anybody just a suggestion that if you're trying to pursue abundance, I would pursue an abundance of hope first. And if you've quit taking action, then maybe you've lost hope. And step back and take a look and refine that hope so that you can start taking action again. Wow,
that's powerful. I love that. Absolutely. Definitely find an abundance of hope. I absolutely love that. So at this point, you know, you're coaching and you're speaking, and what is that doing for you and other people that you're coaching and speaking to?
Well, you know, it moves my spirit to know that I'm not wasting my pain. You know, and that's one of the things I teach is don't waste your pain. But to know that whatever it is that Josh and I have gone through and continue to go through, because this is not like a broken bone that heals and boom, everything's better. Mm-hmm. We're still going through it, and there's new struggles and things that pop up for us weekly. But it's encouraging to me that what I've experienced, I can help other people overcome their problems, their challenges, their struggles, their past, whatever, as a result of this pain that I experienced. And so it buoys me up. I mean, it actually feeds my soul as I'm trying to help other people. And the whole origin of my podcast is the fact that I did go through this, and I wanted to create something that I could have consumed back then. Like, I wished there was a place where I could have gone and been encouraged to persevere, to press on, to never give up or give in, because I'm hearing stories of other people who, either through a health crisis, a tragic accident, a financial collapse, a spouse walking out and leaving you with a handful of kids, that they found ways to, press on and figure it out, figure out the solution to their problem and then make the best of it. So yeah, I don't want to say it's been a blessing. It's like I wouldn't write this into my life, but in a script. But it's taken me a place where I'm pretty happy now.
Well, no, and I heard this somewhere before. Somebody else said this, but it was somebody on one of my shows a while back, and they said, "Turn your mess into your message." Right. And it's extremely powerful, and we can go over and over and over of so many wonderful things that people are doing because of their prior mess or their current mess that they're still in. And most people that get in a mess, the mess is with them, it's part of them, it's who they are. But when you're sharing that, one, it helps you kind of deal with it, and then at the same time you're lifting somebody else up, and like that conference did for you, it's showing that you're not alone. And while the circumstances aren't exactly the same, they are very similar. And as long as you have people around you, the right people around you that are there to lift you up and help you along in one way or another, anything from just coming over and letting you sleep for a couple hours, sitting in the living room with your son and letting you sleep for a couple hours, and that there's your son is safe. That little act of kindness, that little just few minutes, an hour or so, can mean the world and get you rejuvenated and stuff, and show you that there is beauty in the world and there is abundance in the world. And that's what this is all about. So I see you and I having conversations long after this podcast, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I just, having been on that side, like on the dark side of the struggle, I just want to piggyback on that thought that you just brought out. You really can make a huge difference in a person's life who is struggling with something by just being there. Mm-hmm. Just a little act of kindness to help that person understand that there's somebody else there helping to lift the load and endure that burden with, or just walk alongside. I'm telling you guys, whoever's listening to this, you can change somebody's life. You can change their outlook for how they see the world. So go out there and do it, man. Absolutely.
So how did the podcast get started? What made you make that decision to do that?
I just sat back and I wanted to encourage people, and I realized podcasting was one way to get into people's heads, get into their ears, and share a message of hope and opportunity and strength. So one day, and trust me, I stewed about it for a long time, but eventually I realized, man, that my mess could be my message. Like my struggle could show people that they can gain strength in their own. And so eventually, it probably took me about 8 months. No, it was almost a year from the time I thought about it till I finally pulled the trigger. Because I had absolute clarity at that point about what I was going to do, not how, not exactly every step, but like, I need to get this message out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you're also helping quite a few people that are sharing their message as well. Tanner Gears, one of my early guests and a really good friend at this point. We've known each other for, it seems like forever, quite frankly. I've only been podcasting myself for about 6 months, but Tanner was one of my earlier guests, and him and I just stay in contact through social media, and we talk back and forth, messaging and stuff like that. I really create some amazing connections with these men. Aaron Walker is another guy that I stay in contact with, and just amazing, building amazing relationships and connections, and then connecting other people. In fact, I've got somebody I want to connect you with when we get done, a couple people actually when we get done here.
I think helping people deliver their message is just another opportunity to create hope and strength in this world. And so the work that you're doing, sharing people's stories, it buoys you up, but it also is buoying up everybody who's out there listening. So hats off to you, Wally. I think you're doing great work.
Oh, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And I'll mention his name, the guy I want to get you in contact with specifically. There's a couple other folks, but have you heard of David Sanderson?
No, I have not.
So David Sanderson, his episode, I had a conversation with him, and I've talked with him offline a couple times. His episode will be airing February 16th. But David Sanderson was the last passenger to get off the plane that landed in the Hudson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he is he was, how did I get in contact with him? I heard him on a podcast, and I just contacted him. He called me out of the blue. I didn't even know who it was. He goes, Wally, this is David. And I was like, who? He goes, this is David Sanderson, man. And then the name hit me when he said his last name. I was like, David, what's going on? We talked for like an hour. Just had a conversation. But he's got an amazing story other than just that event. But that event, that was a great conversation, and that'll be coming up on 16th of February. But I'm going to get you in contact with him because he's also he in turn got me in contact with Kay Wilkins, who is the CEO of the American Red Cross, the Southern region. And the Pacific. She's, and again, the Red Cross does amazing things for people. So I bring that up because through this podcasting and through this venue and sharing my message and sharing other people's abundant stories has just connected me with some amazing people, and it's truly enriched my life over the last 6 months for sure.
Well, I look forward to connecting with anybody you might suggest, my friend, because I'm sure they're quality people.
They are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, so Mark, at this point, we are ready to pay it forward to our abundant leaders. You ready to do that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So give men of abundance 1 to 3 actionable steps that they can take today.
Okay. Number one, I would say connect. Connect with other men who are in a place where you would like to be, and connect with men where you can actually provide some value to them. So those two groups, I would say connect with the group that you want to aspire to be like, and then also connect with the group that you can help, like you can provide them value and service. And then the other thing I would suggest for an abundant life is to really work on your relationships. If you've got kids, but this works with everybody, I found. It's another little aphorism, but connect before you correct. The more you invest in a relationship and develop a level of trust with the person that you are communicating with, be that your children, your spouse, your coworkers, your employees or employer, the more that you can connect and develop a level of trust, then when you run into some challenges in the future, it's easier for you to correct those problems. And then I would encourage people to drive deeper instead of wider all the time. The strength of structure is found in the stability of its foundation. And so as we strengthen our foundation, drive that a little deeper, and you can frame this up any way you want. You can do it from a position of values and character, or you can do it from a position of your spiritual walk, whatever you want. You want to strengthen your foundation so that you can build that structure bigger and taller.
Excellent. I love it. What daily habits make the biggest impact in your life?
For me, one is using a calendar, but the biggest one is really meditation. I take 10 minutes 3 times a day, right when I wake up, middle of the day, and at night, and I spend 10 minutes of complete quiet time with myself and as few thoughts as possible. And that is probably the most powerful tool I have for myself, and it's maybe the most powerful suggestion I could make to anybody else, because it helps you create space in your mind so that you're not reacting or overreacting to situations. It helps you to just kind of let go, as you mentioned earlier, of things that are not important.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you clarified that specifically, what you do in your meditation, because there's so many different types of meditation, and some people kind of look at it as the yogi sitting on the cliffside, right, legs crossed and whatnot. But I do the same. I do basically the same thing you do. I sit in my recliner. I usually have my little morning routine. I get my stuff ready. Got to take care of the animals because they won't let me relax until they're fed, type of thing. And I'm up at 4:30 in the morning, and I just sit there in the chair and just in quiet before I even pick up my journals, because I journal every morning too. And that's how I clear my head. I just put everything on paper, and then it's out of my head, and I know don't have to think about it all day. I know I got it. If I need to go back to it, I'll go back to it in my journal. But I just sit there in total silence and try to just get out of my head and just clear my head. I love that you clarified that in that way. What book would you recommend to our abundant leaders, and why?
Extreme Ownership is a book I read, several months ago. And the reason you want to read that book is you really learn that in taking responsibility absolutely for everything that's going on in my life is the one guaranteed way of affecting change. Because now I'm not blaming anybody. Now there's no excuses anymore. It's really, I got to own it all. If it's going to be, it's up to me, but I own it from start to finish, and I own the plans, I own the actions, and I own the outcomes. And it's a powerful book. I would suggest for anybody to read. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's by what is his name?
Jocko.
Yeah, Navy SEAL, right?
Willink. Yes.
Yeah, yes. I've heard that one. I've actually got it on my list of a book to get a hold of, and because it's been recommended. Actually, a high school friend of mine just recently recommended that book to me, and actually recommended him to get on the show. So I'm in the process of trying to get in contact with him as well. But yeah, definitely I'll have that
Yeah.
book listed in the show notes along with the links and everything.
Yeah, great. It's an excellent book, worth every minute.
Perfect. So what does living a life of abundance mean to you?
You know, living a life of abundance to me is having enough margin in your life to invest in the people around you. You know, and I've done this before, been so caught up with work and creating maybe some financial abundance that I forgot to create abundance in my relationships with my family and or even my friends or my extended family, you know, siblings and or parents. So managing your life so that you create enough margin so that you can actually invest in those relationships, because when you come to the end of your life, nothing else is going to matter except the people around your bedside who are there because you actually had invested in them and you developed a bond and a relationship that will live on beyond you. So like everything that you lived for, they can carry on and do more good in the world. But if we're not creating enough space, enough margin that we can have the time and the energy for those relationships, then I think we're doing ourselves and future generations a disservice.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that. What do you think holds most people back from living a life of abundance?
Misplaced thoughts and mentally, you know, like this thought that there's scarcity in this world, that there's not enough, that I'm not good enough, that, you know, there's something wrong with me and I can't go ahead and pursue these dreams I have. And they don't have to be centered around finances necessarily, but any dream that I have, thinking that there's this lack in the world, I think that's like a real deal killer. Because again, if I believe there's lack, then there's no hope. And if there's no hope, then I don't take action. And I think if we turn that thing on its head and start looking at the world as a place of possibility, that abundance does exist. And certainly if somebody else is pursuing that and getting results, that if I take similar action, I can get similar results and have that abundance in my life, whether it's an abundance of health, an abundance of love, an abundance of finances, abundance of relationships. Doesn't matter. It works everywhere.
Yeah, excellent. I appreciate you sharing that. I agree. So we're going to close this up, Mark. I really appreciate your time. And before we let you go, I'd love for you to leave us with any parting piece of guidance and any way that we can get a hold of you and eventually that book that you have coming out.
Yeah, you bet. So if listeners want to go to markgoblowsky.com, that's markgoblowsky markgoblowsky.com/Wally, and I will send you guys an infographic of these 7 principles that I live by that have helped me get through the many struggles that I've experienced in my own life. I'd love to share that with you guys. And, you know, I just say keep putting one foot in front of the other, but make sure you're pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That's really abundant of you to share that link with us. And I'll have that link in the show notes so you guys don't have to write it down. I know you're out driving or working out or whatever. And that'll be at menofabundance.com, and you can go there, and all the show notes and any of the links that we talked about will be there in the show notes, complete with timestamps. That's really cool. It's got these timestamps in my show notes, so if you want to go to any point of the conversation that Mark and I just had, you just click on that timestamp. It'll time travel you directly to that when you're on the website at menofabundance.com, and the podcast is. So Mark, again, truly appreciate it. I love this conversation. Thank you again for sharing your kick in the gut moment and everything else with us. It's been greatly beneficial to me, and I know it has to our abundant leaders as well.
Well, thanks for having me, Wally. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother. Take care and go on and live your life of abundance.
Will do. Thank you.
So, man, obviously there was quite a bit to take out of that conversation. Number one, how he dealt with his son and the whole situation from the very beginning. You know, it was hard enough dealing with the accident itself, and then it was a hit and run on top of that. Tons of emotions. And then he had to deal with the doctors telling him stuff that he just refused to believe as far as the health and the future of his son. And then, of course, continuing to raise his son and nurture his son so that he can live the most comfortable and the best life that he possibly can. And then, of course, my goodness, dealing with the emotions of thinking that you might be able to confront the individual who did this to any one of your family members. So here's what I would ask of you today. Go out right now, right this minute. Stop what you're doing. Call your family members if they're not close to you. The ones that are close to you, grab them, hug them. Go out and spend some time with them, because you just never know if anything's going to happen to you, to one of your family members, and it's just not worth it to not love them unconditionally as much as you possibly can right this minute. You know, I can't speak for you, but when somebody asks me what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind when I'm gone, it's not money, it's not property, it's not anything like that. Sure, all that stuff is nice and great, but the legacy that I want to leave behind are the memories. And I want to leave behind the memories that I was there. I want to leave behind the memories that I was there for the people that mean the most to me, when they needed me the most. That's what's important to me. I don't know if that's important to you or not. If it is, I commend you. If not, I can't judge either way. I just know that I want you to live your life of abundance however you see fit. Now, go out and live your life of abundance, and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.